This is just going to be a quick video, but before I start, shout out to Rob High. He gave me some positive feedback. I do appreciate that. And he mentioned that he was going to be reinforcing his boat hull, so I figured I would share some tricks to making that maybe cheaper, maybe easier, and maybe he sees some inside info that he wouldn't have otherwise thought of. So for starters, one of the best ways to save money is with gloves. A lot of people will spend too much on gloves. What you'll see here is what I call my starter glove. This is like a vinyl. These will go on your dry hands nice and easy. So that's your first glove. But the issue with them, as you can see, you're going to make your hands a little sweaty. If you get anything on that, you're going to want to throw it because you don't want to get epoxy over anything that you don't want to. So if your hands are sticky, rather than go wash them or wait for your hands to dry, we could switch to these. You may recognize these. Food servers use them, Subway restaurants, that sort of thing. This is a plastic disposable glove, but what I've found out, and possibly the reason why they use them, they'll go on your wet, clammy hands. So after you've started with these, which fit nice and snug, you can actually switch over to these, which are a one-size-fits-all. They're less snug, but if you pull them, you can still manipulate quite well all your tools and all your things like that. I actually like to get right into the epoxy sometimes with my hands because that allows you to force it into the various materials. Speaking of materials, when you're doing repairs, there's a couple different things you want to think of. There are different ways you want strength. There is rigidity, and there's also abrasion as well as impact resistance. Now, when I'm talking about rigidity, I'm talking about the part's willingness or unwillingness to flex. Some parts are actually designed to flex, and if they are, by putting the weaves in a certain line, in a straight line, you'll be able to give it predictable flex in one direction. Then, if you want, by putting an opposed weave, we call it, that means they're going in opposite or at least a 45-degree angle, but you want to go with basically a 90, then you have, as you can see, noticeably more strength. So that as you keep adding layers and opposing your weaves, you get stronger and stronger. So that's what I mean by rigidity. The other thing that you need to think about is the part's willingness to break. And that usually comes from a combination of the strength of the weave as well as the epoxy. When I say strength of the weave, I mean its willingness to tear. And as you can see, this is hockey tape. It's pretty cheap. It's available in all kinds of colors. Mine just happens to be camo. But you cannot just rip that. Therefore, this has a really good strength against breaking. However, it will not support the epoxy quite as well. This is going to flex with the epoxy, and even if it gets an impact, it's not going to crack or break. So this here, although it's not going to be rigid, as we said before, which is the example with the toothpicks, it's going to be very, very, very strong. One thing I do for rigidity is I like to use this stuff. This is fiberglass drywall tape. And you'll see this right here is how I would basically start orienting. If I had a couple of pieces going, I would then overlap at least a couple of the layers there in a manner where the lines don't match up, so that there, that's pretty good. And the beauty, well, sorry, I shouldn't say the beauty, the trick to that is you want to have the pieces pre-cut. And then, once I've got those, I can actually join that and keep going. But what you'll do is you'll apply your epoxy in between so that each layer has its cloth. You won't just stack up cloth and then fill it in, because you're with your repairs, you want to make sure that you're exposing the fibers. So as you go, you will be sanding, letting it cure, sanding again using your solvent, and then you want to go with another layer. You'll keep going until you get to the full thickness of whatever you're repairing, and then sand back. The reason you don't want to fill it in with just epoxy is if that part flexes the way it's supposed to, or if it gets struck, you may lose just that piece of epoxy. Epoxy itself is essentially plastic, so without the fiber to back it up, it's more the strength of plastic. So what you need to do is put the fiber in your carbon fiber, so to speak. Now, as I've done all these demonstrations, you'll see that I keep this in front of me almost all the time. This is my graph paper. The reason I like to use this is so that if I happen to be drawing out a piece, let's say it's a hood, and I have my weaves on, sometimes you can't see which way your weaves are. So what I'll actually do is I will start by reminding myself that my first layer of cloth went on in this orientation, so that whenever I go to the next layer of cloth, I know to go over this way. And then I will keep using different colors until I get to the top, so that what you want is a weave that looks nice and straight, but that it has the strength of all the opposed weaves underneath. So as a general rule, my straight one will be my last color, and I will plan that out in advance. The other thing I'm really excited to show you, especially if you're Canadian, you may already know what this is. This is a crazy carpet. This blue thing, a crazy carpet, is a thin sheet of plastic for sliding down snow hills. It's got little handles on the end. The reason I've shown you this is because things don't stick to it. That includes cured epoxy, that includes almost any kind of tape. So that if you want to make a larger patch for your repairs, you just go ahead and make that, and this will still have a nice clean glue side. It hasn't been reduced in any way. None of it stayed behind here, so that you can still use that just like it came off the roll, except you've got a larger piece. In addition to that, when epoxy cures, it'll just come right off of this. That ability to flex so much, it'll just pop right off. So if you want, you can work indoors with a piece like this, or you can work outdoors with several of them. But they're, as you can see, fairly cheap. This one's only $4. I hope I was able to help you and maybe save you a bit of money. Good luck with your boat.